What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I'm going to be reviewing Resident Evil 4's remake, talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, so let's buckle in, because honestly, this game is as good as you've heard. I want that to be the reoccurring or the running theme of this video. This game is really, really good. Now, I do want to make something kind of clear, though, right off the jump. I've never looked at this game, and I'm talking about the original Resident Evil 4, I've never looked at it as being my favorite. I guess, there's subjective versus objective. I guess all of it's technically subjective, right? It is not my personal favorite Resident Evil. It's not actually the one I think is the best one. And it's also not the one that got me really into the franchise. Actually, that was Resident Evil 5, if you can believe it. But it's still an incredible game. It was an incredible game. And this remake, I think, just does all the things that it needs to do. Starting with, of course, the visuals. I like to touch upon the visuals. The game looks like it came out this year. Ultimately, with a remake, I mean, you're seeing it with Ada Wong right here. Everybody looks so good, from character models to enemies to locations. I mean, the castle, the island, all these places, just everything looks very good. Now, sometimes the game prioritizes showing you, distance, like a lot of things all at once. And a lot of this game is very kind of narrow. Go through this hallway, go through these different areas. I think it does a great job at both. When it does kind of pull back and say, hey, look at this gigantic area, right? It's more than just this small little thing. It looks fantastic. And then when it says, okay, narrow hallway or underground places or whatever, how does it look now? Still looks great. I do want to talk about the audio as well. I think for a more horror game, and I should probably talk about audio for all game reviews that I do, so I'll start doing it. The audio is great. I mean, honestly, I just played it on the TV. I didn't play it with headphones on or anything. And the game's really not all that scary. There were a few jump scares. There were a few times where I was like, holy dear God, you would turn the corner or something. And obviously there's a couple scenes in this game where whether you want to take out all the enemies or you want to kind of just run and avoid them, I think sometimes you're supposed to run and avoid them. It can still get very tense. You can hear them. They got all these different sound effects. I think it does a really good job. And I think it would only be enhanced by using headphones. I probably took the inferior product through the TV, but it was still really good. I think all the music in this game is really, really great. There's some incredible moments with music. And then just the voices. We could talk about the voices. I think now would be a pretty good time. I do want to talk about Ada, because she is somebody that's kind of gone back and forth. I'll be honest, as the game went on, I liked her. Now, I don't have like an undying loyalty to any of the other previous versions of her. I think she's always been great, but I've never been and I don't want to say stuck, because, you have the right to prefer one versus the other. You absolutely have that right. I've never really cared all that much, is basically what I'm saying. I've always liked her, but, if you replace it, whatever. I thought she did good. She does sound a little, tired, a little, reserved at times. I think, the energy levels kind of need to be, bumped up, but I think she serves her role. I think she's still incredibly cool. Honestly, I think all the emotional beats that you're trying to hit, at first, maybe the first half of the game, the mystery of her, right? I think they still nail that, whether you like or don't like the voice. I think they nail, okay, what's she doing here? What's her goal? All that kind of stuff. And then as she starts to help you in the second half of the game, again, she nails any beat that you'd want her to have. I think Ashley, again, even with Ashley, I was never too high on her, too low on her. Originally, I had read some, which I probably shouldn't have done, some gaming journalist, hot takes on her character, at least back then. And there's a lot of people, let's say, that really don't like her. I thought she did really, really well in this version. I liked the voice, again, how she looked, the personality, the kind of spunk. I think how she acts in the game works really well. And I will say that, right, comparing it to the original, they've done a lot to try to flesh Ashley out, mainly in the gameplay, right? The fact that she's not going to be just this hampering, thing on you. You can order her into places. She can stay away from you. She's a bit smarter. And I do like it, honestly, because I was waiting. A lot of this game is when you're with her, enemies will sometimes target her, right? And you got to keep her safe. And you can do that really wrong. If the game's not working right, I do want to focus on that because it is such a big part of the game. I was pleasantly surprised. She stays out of the way kind of when you want her to. There are some times when you call her up to you and then you tell her, okay, disperse, flee, run away. There are some times where she picks some odd patterns to run, or she does get in the way. I will say I got very frustrated in a couple different scenes. I thought I was aiming right. I thought when I was shooting, and I was aiming at an enemy, I thought I hit the enemy. Man, I shot Ashley way too many times. I think in one sequence that I failed and had to restart, I think 4 times I shot her each time. And that was one of the only times I did that. Maybe I shot Ashley like 5 to 6 times in the entire game. So it wasn't too bad, but there were some times where it frustrated me. But honestly, like again, I think and I thought in those moments, okay, how bad would this game be if it was like worse? If the AI was atrocious, if Ashley had no idea what she was doing, right? I actually think she operates very, very smart, right? There's scripted events and she's not going to help you in any way, right? Except for when she's supposed to help you. But you can still do the other scenes, all of the scenes that you have to protect her. You can still do those right. And I do think that they did. So that honestly makes a good segue into the gameplay. That's one of this game's biggest strengths, right? You think about Resident Evil 4. I've talked about it before. One of the things I love about Resident Evil 4 is just how different, I guess, it looked at the time, but also felt at the time with aiming and with the way you fight with a lot of his roundhouse kicks and all that kind of stuff. There's some really great fighting in this game, and there's tension. Like the idea of reloading and dropping your weapon to then pick it back up, like that takes some precious seconds, right? I got very good with headshots. Well, I don't want to say very good. My average in the chapters was roughly like 80%. So I'd have like an 80% headshot rating. I think that was pretty darn good. Maybe there's some people that are like in the 90s plus, but I'm pretty proud of myself overall. But it feels good. This game feels incredibly good. Obviously, there's multiple ways of doing it. I think that's the strength of a lot of these Resident Evil games. Is I used a pistol. The pistol was my primary weapon. I used it probably 60% of the time. Shotgun, sniper, probably next to. I used like the bolt launcher gun a couple times, like 2 or 3 times. But the pistol, no joke, was most of the playthrough. But you don't have to do that, right? And it's a survival game, so the trading with the merchant and selling things and upgrading things, it's really, you dig your own grave, right? Like if you get towards the end of the game and you find yourself to be screwed, it's most likely some of the decisions that you've made in your preferences of what you've bought and what you've tuned, right? Have you upgraded the power, the durability, the reload times, depending on what the object is. The game's deep. But ultimately it feels so good and it feels very rewarding and it feels very tense. I mean, the way this game gets you, because it is a lot of action. Remember, this was the jump. This was the big one. I would say this jumped way more between 3 to 4 than 4 to 5. I know so many people, 5 was way too actiony. In my memory bank, 5 is not that much more removed action-wise from 4. That could be totally wrong, but I don't remember it being so over the top. 4, I really think, was the first game to actually do it, actually go for it, and then 5 kind of just continued it. So if you're going to get mad at something, I'm just kidding. But no, 4 really does feel good, and that's where the tension comes from, because you need to get those headshots. You need to kind of time things, right, where when you attack an enemy, right, when you kind of stun them and you go up and you do whatever the move's going to be, you want to try to time it so it's next to other enemies, so you're kind of clearing like a wave of them. It's pretty precise. It's pretty like you have to do things on purpose, and I love it. And then it also does have those times where it's a narrow hallway and you're running away from whether it be like an unkillable enemy or enemies that are just really difficult. You can kill them, but you don't need to, and you're dodging, you're running around, but it's a narrow, right? There's a lot of different hallways you have to go through, do one thing, run to a different area, do another thing. I love those moments. I really do. So they are great. The story is just as good. There have been, the changes, the different kind of voice lines. I liked it. I think it, again, with the Ada thing as our kind of model, I think it nailed all the things it needed to do. Like in terms of introducing the characters, I think it introduced them all kind of fine. I think the relationships that you're, as a player or Leon, is supposed to form with these characters, I think they still do. Do you know what I mean? Although some of the lines are different and maybe some people prefer some over others, and that's fine. You have that right. The game was successful because people bought it, played it, loved it back in the day. You have the right to prefer one thing over the other. But I think the beats that they're trying to hit with character relations and deaths and just big moments, I think they still nail it. If there's a couple changes, if there's some visuals that are kind of changed, I think at the end of the day, it's still what it needs to be. I mean, that's honestly what I would say. You can prefer one to the other, but I think what it's ultimately trying to do at the end of the day, it still does no matter the changes. Now, I will say, in the beginning, I said not my favorite Resident Evil. I actually don't think this game is paced as amazing. Now, some people think the pacing of this game is absolutely incredible, and again, that's fine. I think there is good pacing. I think the game ramps up, so like it starts kind of slow, then it goes up. I mean, it drops a couple times. I don't love the pacing of this game overall, but again, I think when it nails its beats, like you always know, cutscene at like the beginning of a chapter, end of a chapter, maybe a couple times in between, and there's going to be puzzles there, there'll be enemies to face. Like once you go through a couple chapters, how these chapters are going to play out in terms of their structure. They're all structured very, very similar, kind of broken down with bosses, right? Bosses at the end of every couple chapters. It's how these games are actually just in general. It reminds me even of the newer ones, which maybe some people like, maybe some people don't like. It still keeps the same general idea, right? You're in this area, you're going back and forth, you're finding things, whether it's to unlock a door, whatever. You're facing different enemies, and then you're going to be facing like a boss once you kind of go through the entire arc. And I mean, these games are pretty similar in that way. I like it. I really do like it. I just don't think the pacing is like as perfect as I've seen other people say. But I mean, honestly, overwhelmingly, this game is great. This game is a really, really good game. It's a fantastic remake. We're just 3 months in, and we've already had a Dead Space remake, which I firmly believe is better than the original game. You can definitely argue this one, I think, and I think this one is going to be more argued. I kind of prefer this one, but it's also, as I've said, I never had that big of an allegiance to Resident Evil 4. I liked it. I did play it, but 5 was the first one I jumped in. Really, I go to 7 as kind of a personal favorite. It's what reinvigorated my love for Resident Evil. That was the whole plan of Resident Evil 7, was to kind of bring Resident Evil back in the first place. So 4 has never been my personal favorite or my objective, subjective, like best game in the franchise. It's just never been. So I don't know if you want to argue it, you totally can with this. But again, 3 months in, Dead Space Remake absolutely crushed it. I firmly believe that one was better than the original. And this game is really a slam dunk. I really do believe. Yes, people may have issues with the Ada thing or some additions or some subtractions, but I think it does its job. And it's meaty. It took me about 13 hours. It was like 12 hours, 58 minutes for me. The average is somewhere in that 12 to even like 15 because there's the side missions. I did an okay amount. I think I did like 6 or 7. I think there's like 15, 6. I did about half, let's say, of the side missions of this game. But, there's New Game Plus, and there are the side missions to complete, and all the collectibles that I skipped over. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this game to do. So, I know people are going to be playing this game for a long time. That's awesome. I really did like it, and it deserved to happen. There are people that were worried with this remake, and I think rightfully so. Why remake a game that people, oftentimes consider one of the greatest, of all time? Why do it? Well, I think they actually did it really well. I really do. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you're all subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you want to check out any of my other YouTube channels or our social media, all the links are in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.